Phone's off the hook. No one knows where we are. It's a long time since I drank champagne. The ocean's blue as your eyes. I'm gonna take it with me when I go. Long since gone. Now way back when we lived in Coney Island. There ain't no good thing ever dies. I'm gonna take it with me when I go. Far, far away, train whistle blows. Wherever you're going, wherever you've been, waving goodbye at the end of the day. You're up and you're over and you're far away. Always for you and forever yours. It felt just like the old days. We fell asleep on Beulah's porch. I'm gonna take it with me when I go. All broken down by the side of the road. I was never more alive or alone. I've worn the faces off all the cards. I'm gonna take it with me when I go. The children are playing the end of the day. Strangers are singing on along. There's got to be more than flesh and bone. All that you've loved is all you own. In a land there's a town, and in that town there's a house, and in that house there's a woman, and in that woman there's a heart I love. I'm gonna take it with me when I go. I'm gonna take it with me when I go.
You're like, where am I?
I want to move this closer because we have so much to share that's so deep in our hearts. And I think what we've just witnessed is just an incredible, incredible testimony to a life that has touched all of us so deeply and so profoundly. So on behalf of Mitch's family, Alex, Robert, Rachel, McLean, and sweet Jordan, the child who never cries. But just wait, it can't last forever.
Hold on, time out. It's Mikhail. That's my brother, Mikhail. Not McLean.
I said McLean.
It's
Mikhail.
all good.
Thank you, Robert.
Sorry.
And what a privilege it is for all of us to be here. So, my name is Tom Redden. I'm a friend of Mitchell's from college. It seems like we have the Williams folks, we have the West End folks, and we have a few other folks here. And what a blessing that we can share this together. And for those of you who have seen Mitchell in the last number of years, the dominant theme that one walks away from is the enormous gratitude that he had for the people he loved in his life. And these represents the core of those people. There's no doubt about it. And so on behalf of Mitchell, wherever he is, I want to extend gratitude for the fact that we're able to be here, and knowing that in his heart of hearts, he would just love to see absolutely every single one of you here. Now, you might wonder about the outfit. It may be a little bit of a curiosity for you. So there are basically two reasons, one official, the other not as official. The first official reason is the fact that I am a Zen Buddhist priest and a Zen Buddhist teacher. And so for a ceremony such as this, the robes, the formal robes are appropriate. The second reason, which is actually much closer to my heart, is the fact that I am a terrible dresser. Seriously. Like back in 1973, if you remember the style, it was like blue jeans and some like ratty shirt. And I have not progressed from then. It's 50 years. For 50 years, I'm in the same place, right? And part of my problem is the fact that people I hung out with, which was Wirtz and Marfo and other of the good people here, they're just as bad dressers as I am. They were never any help whatsoever, not in the least. However, my dear wife, Kim, is here. And she said to me a few years ago, she said, Chester, I really like you in black. I said, really? I've never worn black. And now, you know, whenever I go out, I wear black. And it just happens that the robe is black. And even more important than that is she says to me, Chester, I just want you to know that I think you're really sexy in your robes. And so I wear them as much as possible. We have busy lives. Some of you have traveled literally across the country to be here. You have other commitments, you've put them aside. And so what I'd like to do is just take a minute and gather ourselves, if we could, okay, collectively, individually and collectively. Feel free to close your eyes. I want to invite you to take a couple deep breaths. And we want to bring our full selves to this celebration. We have people in our lives who touch us at the deepest level. And Mitchell was many, many things. As much as anything, he was a person of just absolutely extraordinary passion. And that passion is something that all of us have been touched by in the most profound ways. And so I ask that we bring our full selves, our body, our mind, our spirit to this event, to this place, to the good people who are all here. and to bring our full selves to this very moment as we celebrate an absolutely extraordinary life. In addition to bringing our full attention to what Mitchell has given all of us, there's what we are sharing, what we all share, each and every one of us, individually and collectively. We are here together. We are here in our grief, in our sadness, in our enormous love for Mitchell and the loss that we feel. We live in a culture where we tend to deny death. It becomes very mechanical. We keep it at a distance. We also try to process that very quickly, our grief, our sadness. How often do you hear, get over it? It's been a year since he or she died. Get over it, right? My father died when I was 11. I'm 69, what's that, 58 years ago? I grieve every day of my life. 58 years, 365, I grieve. He ain't here. He missed most of my life. I want us to encourage to take the full impact of Mitchell's loss deeply into our hearts, deeply into our spirits and our minds, and understand that at the heart of that, underneath everything, is not the negative of the sadness. We have tears, which is appropriate. It is the enormous love that we have for Mitchell and for the people we've lost. It is that love that brings about the sadness, that brings about the grief. And in the process, from my experience, our heart gets larger. It literally grows. Because in the sadness, our feelings, our passions, they expand. And I also am convinced that the meaning of this life, of this good life, the blessing, the privileges, the honor we have to live the life we have, to live in this country, I mean, look around the world. Things could be a lot worse, regardless of where folks are. We all suffer to some degree, at some level, all of us. And yet I want to suggest that all of us being here today is that our hearts are literally expanding to the point that they are overlapping with others, that we are interconnected in a way that's absolutely undeniable, at least in my mind. And I want to encourage us not to be afraid for the pain and the loss to sink in, because the deeper we go, the fact is, the more compassion we have for the world. Because everybody's got something, everybody. We grieve what we love, we grieve our loss, we grieve what we miss, and we miss Mitchell. We miss him deeply. Standard American sort of mainstream response to consolation at a funeral is typically, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for your loss. It's a nice, obviously the sentiment is solid. It's really hard to know what to say to people at a service or at a funeral. They've just lost a loved one. In the Jewish tradition, there is another way to approach this that I find remarkably powerful. And there may be many, but here is one. And it is that may his memory be a blessing. May his memory be a blessing. We have the memory and the blessing that it is. I'm touched by both of those. You know, Mitchell is one of those individuals about whom we have 100 stories. I mean, and most of them are very funny and fun, but not all of them. Some are sad, some are harsh. But guess what? Welcome to the human condition for all of us. Right? As you know, Mitchell was a child of the Holocaust. And as a result of that, for me anyways, there was a certain restlessness. There was a certain anxiety that he simply carried with him, even when times were good. I was always struck, I had been struck, that when I used to visit him in his big house, his medium house, his apartment, and even in the skilled nursing homes, the television was always on. Always. It wasn't not just in the living room. It was in the kitchen, it was in the bedroom, and believe it or not, sometimes it was in the bathroom. And I always wondered about this. And I hearken back to the last week that Mitchell and I had together before graduation back in 1977. We're down at the Tubbs, which for some of us is a swimming hole in Vermont, which he loved and we went off and took. And Mitchell and I, and it was one of these places in Vermont where the stream goes down and created literally, there was a waterfall and literally creating a tub. You know, it was like 5 feet tall. Cold water, freezing. And the trees would fall down and we would sit on the logs and we would overlook it. And he said to me, Chester, you know, the one thing I need to learn before I graduate from college is how to meditate. And I said, okay, well, I'm happy to spend as much time talking about meditation. I said, you know, basically all you have to do, you breathe in, you breathe out, count 1. Breathe in, breathe out, count 2. Go to 10 if you can. But basically you follow your breath. Okay, I can do this. Mitchell never meditated in his life. There's no question about it. And his life was very much, not so much, for most of it, internally oriented. You know, I'm a kid who went to Catholic Mass all the time and then got into meditation big time. And I prayed a lot to my father. You know, I lost my father as a kid, and I prayed, dear God, may we win the football game, and I hope my mother's happy. You know, it's sort of like that. And so for me, it was really sort of a natural thing, simply due to my environment. But Mitchell never sort of had that experience. And yet what happened after his stroke, it seems to me that there were 2 major pieces, there are many, but 2 main pieces that I sort of made sense of it, is that where his life before his stroke was very externally oriented. It was about living a nice, comfortable life. Obviously, he worked on Wall Street and had a very significant income. He had nice things, etc. He enjoyed that enormously. You know, he wanted to, I love his hairdo here, right? He was always fussing with his hair. How do I look? So there was much that sort of externally orientation of his life, it seemed to me. After his stroke, that changed. In the very beginning, he wanted to go back, I'm talking about the very beginning, right? He wanted to go back to work. Okay. He talked to a former boss. That didn't quite work out, right? And then he wanted to be able to walk. He's half paralyzed. Ultimately, that never happened all by itself. He had a walker, got up to 100 steps and so forth. He was very proud of that, very determined, etc. And yet by the end, the last year or 2, the last number of months, it became clear to Mitchell that the end was coming. Because for years, it was always his determination to reach a goal. And it was about a month or so before he died that he said to me, Chester, I think this is it. And he knew it. And the thing is that in the last few years of his life, he began to pray. He had he obviously came from a Jewish tradition, and yet in terms of his active spiritual life, let's just say I don't think it was that rich or that deep. He began to pray. And I said, and this goes back a couple of years, and I said, how often do you pray? And on one hand, he said, well, I pray different times a day, and other times he said, I pray all day long. And the other thing that he said that really struck me, he said, Chester, you know, what I realize after all these years is that I'm a much nicer person now than I was. And I think what happened is that, Mitchell was always so much fun and so forth, and he also always had an edge. The hardship and his family and so forth, I think, never missed. But in the end, it softened. In the end, I think that as his external sort of being in the world passed, his internal continued to develop. And for me, that's a very heartening thing, that at the very end, we have, if we're going to die with a certain level of sort of, equanimity, we've got to accept it. This is going to happen. And I think Mitchell's prayerful life allowed him at the very end to have a certain level of peace, at the same time as that his heart was broken for moving on from his beloved children, whom he adored just infinitely. So it's, again, a great privilege for me to begin our celebration today. We have a cast of superstars to follow. Peter, Kaplan, Wirtz will follow, the family, etc. Robert, the video, absolutely breathtaking. I mean, absolutely breathtaking. What a beautiful thing. It's a great honor for me to be here. I will bid you adieu at the very end. And so I think, Peter, the floor is yours.
Peter Kaplan is my name. Mitchell Lawrence Asch, September 15, 1955, October 11, 2024. Hey, June. It's your old pal Schlee. Just calling to say hey to you. Please call me back as soon as you can, if you feel like it. Much love. It never seemed to matter if I, in fact, had initiated the call. That was Schlee. He was calling. Vintage Schlee. But let's begin at the beginning, shall we? It was 1966 when Mitchell Asch and his family, mother Selena, Sella, father Paul, and brother Howard, later Adam, moved to Brookline from Boston's Mattapan enclave, and the young fella, soon to become the bespectacled young fella, was enrolled at the John D. Runkle School. Mitchell's black satin crossover snap tie, undoubtedly reserved for school pictures, and his mandated affinity for the accordion and lederhosen, not to mention his glasses, immediately put the new kid in a tough spot. But he managed to fight his way out of it. Boy, did he ever. Mitchell, and incidentally, in the nearly 60 years of white-on-rice super friendship we enjoyed, I never once called him Mitchell or Mitch. Mitchell was a fighter. Some would have described him as a bully, and he was. By his own admission, reluctantly, and by ours, readily. He somehow felt the need, the compulsion, to behave like an ass. Maybe it was insecurity. Surely it was youthful indiscretion. But regardless, it didn't play well. You either loved Ashley or you hated him. There was no gray area, nothing in between. I, of course, loved him, but found myself frequently admonishing him, sometimes sternly enough that we nearly came to blows, and imploring him to treat his parents at 21 Strathmore Road and then at 283 Tappan Street and others with greater respect. He heard and occasionally he listened. He was tough, very, very tough. And his toughness was only exceeded by his fierce loyalty. If Schlee liked you, he'd do anything for you. If he loved you, well, the sky was the limit. He was every bit of Mr. Much, my moniker for him. Mr. Much. Nobody embraced life with such exuberance and had more fun than Mr. Much. I mean, who else do you know who could ingest a hearty slice of Pino's pizza directly from that great big double-stacked steel oven, roof of the mouth burning be damned. He didn't care. He didn't care. Or inhale an entire quart of Coca-Cola, 37 cents back in the day, in one gulping splurge before offering you the backwash, punctuated by a belch of epic proportion.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Or simultaneously eat a bowl of clam chowder and a slab of blueberry pie a la mode while holding a conversation. A soliloquy might be more apt. You just didn't want to sit next to him or across from him in this scenario. Boy, did he love to talk. Never stopped, it seemed. But that's just the point. He loved life. He was the poster boy for debauchery, a self-avowed lodestar as an LOAD. He was ebullient, to say the least. And he had a quick wit and a razor-sharp sense of humor, perhaps never better illustrated than when he looked at a mutual friend, slightly disheveled, and remarked, "Hey, asshole, what do you, comb your hair with a butter knife?" When Schley had a stroke, we weren't on the best of terms. I received a call from a mutual close friend who happens to be here today, who suggested I look in on him, despite the vagaries of our relationship at the time. I did just that. After all, our lifelong friendship certainly trumped any piddling nonsense that had occasionally arisen. Schley and I talked every single day, usually multiple times from that day forward. We rarely visited. We'd see each other a few times a year, if that, and that one was on me. I was selfish. I couldn't bear to see him in such dire straits. Somehow, our daily telephone conversations sufficed, and were able to uplift him, and in so doing, uplift me. We'd talk about sports all the time, and about whatever else came to mind. We'd reminisce, we'd examine the present, and we'd look to the future, stressing the positive while focusing on what was directly in front of us. That day, that hour, and that minute. That ball game. Schley spoke glowingly of his 3 children and his new grandson. He made it clear that he loved all of his many friends. We made it a point to be grateful for what we had. We tried not to think about what we didn't have. We pushed reality to the back burner, so far back that it was out of sight and hence out of mind. I know this made him feel good, if only for the duration of our chats, and me too. In the early stages of his convalescence and beyond, Schley was determined to walk again. When specialists and others might rain on his parade with drops of that dreaded aforementioned reality, he would not listen. He wouldn't have it. His desire to get better was unrelenting. "I want to be able to walk to the mailbox," unaided of course, "and get my mail," he'd say. "I want to walk to the corner store by myself one day," he'd postulate. The self-proclaimed eye candy of each facility he called home meant it, and he worked his ass off. Riding the stationary bike, tooling around each floor in his chair, nosing into what he could. Invariably, he'd report to me. "Rode the bike on level 3, June. Did 35 laps. Had a fall today. No big deal. Don't know what happened." I'm not going to any of these classes. They're worthless. They suck. And the median age is 91. "Hey, June, what time are the Sox on? What channel? Do I get that one?" Schley tried harder than most anyone could. He was simply going to power through it, to use his words, until the end. "Hey, June," he said, "you know, I've never given up in my life, ever. I won't give up." And he didn't give up. He gave out. After all, how much can one person take? I, like all of us, I'm sure, have a huge hole in my heart. The loss of Mr. Much is still raw and open, a wound that may never fully heal for me. It is too bad, tragically too bad. I will choose to remember the laughs, the closeness, the fun, and the unbridled joy we shared over parts of a 7-decade mega friendship. I will take solace in the thought that I was very fortunate to have known Mitchell Asch and to live life with him as we lived it. I think he would want that. May he rest in peace.
Mitchell Lawrence Asch. My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But ah, my foes, and oh, my friends, it gives a lovely light. That simple poem by Edna St. Vincent Millay sums up our friend Mitch. He had an almost frantic lust for life and a wicked sense of humor. His was a constant search for what might be possible. He avoided half measures. He always wanted to know what his options were. We all had nicknames in college. Mitch's friends growing up in Brookline called him Ashley. At Williams, we shortened it to Schlee. My nickname was Wirtz, but for the last decade or so, Schlee addressed me slyly as Wirtissimo. Perhaps Wirtz played very loud. Schlee sought that extra step. He turned the nickname up to 11. Mitchell's parents were Holocaust survivors. Ironically, freshman year, he was paired with a roommate named Bill Hutwelker, whose parents, suffice it to say, were not. Even though his parents' tragic legacy always rode just below the surface for Schlee, he and Hut were very cordial. Schlee could be quick to anger, but he could also be the consummate gentleman. As do we all, I have many memories of Mitchell. He was point guard and captain of his high school basketball team, and even though he didn't go out for the team at Williams, he was constantly playing pickup games. I can remember dozens of devastating no-look left-handed passes that led to assists. He was good. His left-footed shot was a threat on the soccer field, too, until an ACL tear ended his soccer playing days sophomore year. We spent our careers, for the most part, in New York City, which was tough for Schlee, as he adored all things Boston and lived and died with their sports teams, the Bruins, the Patriots, the Red Sox, and especially his beloved Celtics. To Mitchell, Bob Cousy lived on Mount Olympus. I once was talking about something in New York at the Garden, only to have Schlee cut me off and snap, Madison Square Garden. To Schlee, there was only one garden, just as there was only one country club, and they were both in Boston. Through our 20s and 30s and even into our 40s, we spent a lot of time together. I remember watching football games and boxing matches at Schlee and Pat's apartment on Jane Street, and then going to nearby restaurants for dinner. Mitch was not real handy in the kitchen, but he ate food more vigorously than anyone I've ever met, and he could wrestle a menu to the ground in seconds. We had many, many workday lunches together, catching up on how we were both doing. After his stroke, I brought him to a restaurant near here, and when he objected to me paying the bill, I pointed out that over the years, we had probably enjoyed 100 lunches together, and yet this was the first time I had ever paid. He was that generous. Money, for the most part, was unimportant to Mitchell. He spent money as freely as he made it, and he made a lot. The money was just something that allowed him to be indulgent, especially to his friends and to his family. That family was his pride and joy. His children were everything to Mitchell. Anytime I visited, he would provide updates on Alex and Robert and Rachel. The arrival of Rachel and Mikhail's son, Jordan, filled him with a deep satisfaction. And it wasn't just his family he cared about. It was your family, too. He remembered the names of your kids. He knew the names of your grandkids. For 40 years, he always referred to my wife, both in person and in conversation, as Sweet Jane. After his stroke, and Schlee could tell you to the day how long it had been, he was bound and determined to recover as much as he possibly could. Sadly, for the through and through southpaw that he was, the stroke took out his left side. Still, he leapt into physical therapy, pulling himself down hallways and around rooms using his right side with a railing and working his right-handed walker until he was exhausted. In the end, it was all for naught, as his left side stiffened and his body slowly gave out. Yet this rarely affected his mood. He was always eager to talk to his friends, and he loved getting visits. Within a year of the stroke, on September 28, 2013, a bunch of his Williams friends convened and took him out for a restaurant meal. There were 26 of us in attendance, and this became the first Schliefest. Over the years, there were 6 more Schliefests, with friends flying into Boston from all over the country to be with Mitch. The 8th fest was scheduled for October 19th, 3 weeks ago, but Schlie couldn't make it. Still, this group of 20 or so college friends reunited regularly over the course of the last 12 years to be with Mitchell. He kept our friend group together. It was his gift to us. Some years ago, while scouting for film locations in the Bronx, our little band turned a corner and came upon a gigantic memorial painted across a wall. In vibrant colors, there was a large portrait of a lost friend surrounded by all the things he loved in life, and in huge letters was written a final message: "Hector, miss you like a motherfucker." When I would tell that story, I always thought it was funny, but now I know exactly what that plain language means. Miss you, Schlie.
Born with the moon in Cancer, choose her a name she will answer to. Call her green, and the winters cannot fade her. Call her green for the children who've made her little green. Be a gypsy dancer. He went to California, hearing that everything's warmer there. So you write him a letter and say, her eyes are blue. He sends you a poem and she's lost to you. Little green, he's a non-conformer, just a little green, like the color when the spring is born. There'll be crocuses to bring to school tomorrow.
I'm gonna use my baby's outfit as my tissue because I think it's better with makeup. First, I want to thank everyone for coming together today to celebrate the life of my dad. I know having his friends and family together, he is smiling in heaven, where I believe he is. I also believe he's here with us today in all the empty seats. I learned the importance of family and friends. I learned a lot from my father. I learned to be tough and assertive at times. Some may say intense, but I call it speaking my mind. We are both very blessed to have the same friendships last since our childhood. I want to thank my dad for the memories and traditions I will never forget and always hold a special place in my heart. Yearly trips to Ogunquit and never failing to stop for a game at Fenway on the way home. I know our family was not traditional, but he always showed up to support me when it matters. Whether it was a dance recital, soccer game, or cheerleading competition. Taking me in to work with him in New York City, I remember standing at the top of the building. In the windows, we would look down and he would tell me how all the people were ants. The many animals he had, Cheech, Chong, Larry the Bird, Nomar, Manny, Yezostrzemski, Asch, and our beloved Rodney, who I know he is now reunited with. 12 years ago, in the worst way, God slowed my dad down. He fought like hell and never gave up. He would always tell me, I'm coming to your wedding even if I have to walk there, which was a 10-hour drive, so if that puts anything in perspective. He dreamed of walking. I feel so blessed that he was able to meet and hold his beautiful grandson, Jordan Mitchell King. We will never let him forget his papa. And all of those memories will now be passed on to him. I find peace that now my dad is in heaven with no pain, no limitations, and he can be anywhere and everywhere all at once. Swimming, diving off cliffs, walking, and probably smoking a joint, while yelling at the Celtics or Red Sox on television. My dad told me that he wanted his 3 kids to be together laughing, and I'm so glad that he was able to witness that, both on my wedding and then again today. As he would always tell me, I love you more than tongue can tell, Dad. Thank you for everything. Go Sox, go Celtics, go Patriots.
Hey, everybody. Nice work. I'll probably say some of the things that have been said already, and that's great. I'm glad they've been said. And everything that Jordan squeals out is just a blessing, too. Just keep it going. I need to say thank you before anything else. There's a man downstairs right now, Rob Ruda, at the desk. I don't know this man. And that is integral to this day for all of you here. I want to thank the West End House at large. I want to thank Bill and Brian and Margolin, who are here with us today. And just beautiful. I hated the West End House camp. I was such a pussy, and I was in Bill's office, and I made him like my psychoanalyst when I was like 7. And I was a big mama's boy, and I was in the phone booth at the mess hall every day calling Pat. So you made that great, or as good as it could be, and this is better than I could ever imagine today. So thanks, guys. And thank you, Shayla and Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Peter. Junior, I love you. And thank you, Wirtz. There's a reason why I picked you too. And thank you, Skip and Moffo. No, nothing else necessary to say about that. And thank you today and yesterday and forever, Chester, for that placidity and sexy, enormous heart that you stun us all with. And I got a poem I want to read. It's on the back of that thing. I got 2 poems. He probably read 3. He had a poster with William Carlos Williams' poem, not this one, on his wall. So that was one. All the complicated details of the attiring and the disattiring are completed. A liquid moon moves gently among the long branches, thus having prepared their buds against a sure winter. The wise trees stand sleeping in the cold. And it gets cold up here. So Paul and Selena won a dance contest in the Bronx. And with the winnings, they moved to Boston, allegedly. And then he was Boychik, and he was Ashley, and he was Schlee, and he was Mr. Determination. And he was raised hard and fast where the debris meets the sea. And he was given the gift of Brookline. And he read the first and last page, and he would ace the exam. And he was a Dean Park, this said Dean Park bully, and then I put delinquent, because I thought that was, but let's be real. He was a West Ender. He was captain of the Blue Gypsies, and he was captain on the pitch and on the court, and he was a captain for whom, fittingly, the Atlantic coastlines of his youth brought an exalted peace like nothing else, aside from maybe my sister. He was a lefty. He was short and strong and quick too. And he was never, ever capable of suffering fools, certified or imagined, ever. And he was willing and able to make any and all of us aware of this. And he was snowed in, and he made an impression because he never did not. And he was the Jewish jock quota of 1973, where he would find sanctuary amongst newfound brothers and sisters. And he was into Motown, especially Aretha. But then these relative aliens, with their real unbridled kindnesses and curiosities and goodness, played him Madman Across the Water and Joni Mitchell, and he was pleased. Less so with the Grateful Dead, but nevertheless. He was an olive stud with a voluminous Jufro. And he was iron like a lion in Zion. And he was there when Bobby Orr flew, and when Whisk waved at fair. And he was there when Bowie was lowered from the rafters on a chicken wire crescent moon at that garden down south. That garden. He was there at the Bon Bon and the Bistro with you, Mom. And he was there to reap the benefits of Reaganomics, and at first they did him very well. He was quick to lap the MBAs with his European history degree and a mnemonic capacity that we all know was baffling and extraordinary. He was a husband, and he was a father, and he was my father. And he was a king and a fool, and a silverback rhinoceros puppy dog. And he would beat his barrel chest, and he would flash his piercing green eyes. And he was always just about 15 minutes away, but he was always there. He was my champion, and he was my best friend. He was on the Garden State Parkway, two puffing a pack's worth of Marlboro Lights all the way, raging at the highways in the world in between him and a ballet recital or a middle school jazz concert or an away basketball game. And he was uncensored. He was constant in his admiration and respect for the humanitarians of the world, for the films of David Lean, and for people smarter than him. He was constantly reminding his children that any community worth living and loving would never have space for racism or bigotry. He was constantly reminding those around him that it's the economy, stupid, and he was so very right. He was there with Miss Cool drinking mushroom tea in the grill, and he was there in the free town of Christiania debating Clapton versus Lofgren, and he was there at the Fairmont in San Francisco to see Ella, and he was there poolside on a rooftop in Dallas to chastise David Lee Roth about his dubious levels of couth in the presence of their elders. And he would dive 35-foot cliffs into a sacred Caribbean with a sublime abandon, and it's distinctly possible he Molotov cocktailed a liquor store owned by a landlord that crossed him.
Wow.
That came out post-flood. He was a lot to deal with. And he dealt with a lot. And he taught me about so many things, worldly things and artful things and principled things. And he taught me how to get the gist of things by listening and remembering and comparing and contrasting. He was honest enough to footnote this all with, do as I say, not as I do. And here and now I can happily disobey this request. because what he did, what I witnessed most was love. His family and his friends and places and the blues and the Celts. That's what he taught me most about. That's what I learned most from him. Those lessons being both prescriptive and from experience. I would question his logic and his battles and his lines in the sand and his self-esteem. And I never question his love. For me and my siblings, for his parents, for his cultivated families in Brookline and East Parsons Field and Williamstown. I was going to refrain from cursing, but because that was something newfangled for him, but he loved so fucking hard. Reciprocity of which was his lifeblood. And he survived survivors. And he survived the faulty wiring of a motel pool light and exploding out of a hatchback into the frozen backwoods of the Berkshires. And he survived for 20 hours as so very much of him slid away, and never to return. He survived the hospital beds and the overworked nurses and the monolithic patronage. But through the love that he ceaselessly shared, he lived. Those that felt it were not marked by it, branded. And I miss the person who sought me out every day of my life to express that cast iron and tenacious affection and care. But as we all know, there is both tragedy and empirical truth in his unburdening from survival. And we know this. Without that struggle, there's only space for his immemorial, ever-present, evergreen as his eyes love. For all of you. It will never fade like something so finite as the sun or the moon and the stars, and it'll never have to survive, and it will always be there, and it lives. And as I have had the best of fortunes to say, most of the days I have seen come and go, I love you too, Dad. It's right here. And thanks in advance.
Shit. Okay. I've been writing for years, and this one was really hard to sit down and write, so I made an outline. Yeah, I'm probably going to repeat a lot of things people said, and I'm definitely really similar to my father. I did write something 10 years ago for someone, and I'm just going to open up with the opening paragraph that I was just reminded about to add why I'm really proud of who our father raised us to be. And the opening line was, during my childhood, my father was one of the few parents I knew who even discussed racism. I learned to hate Nazis even before I understood the birds and the bees. My father felt it was essential to take me to see Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List, regardless of whether other people in the theater were shocked by the sight of a child watching these films. I remember when the Klan marched in New York City in 1999. I never felt uncomfortable cursing in front of my father again. I just made this outline this morning, and I really thought a month and 2 days was enough to get through the tears, but that video, which Robert and James, thank you, but this is what I managed to put together in my outline this morning. I really wish he was here to see this. He would be so hyped. He would be so fucking hyped. This is just a baby step or two under Jordan, your wedding, and meeting my Greek wife, who wished she was here. Fuck. Sorry. Shit. Yeah, so seeing us together with y'all would bring him so much joy, and I'm just really grateful to be part of this, and grateful for Robert for kind of being a way to get all of you together. I missed him by just a few hours, like a month and 2.5 days ago on Yom Kippur Friday or pre-Yom Kippur or whatever. But I know he was coming up until the last minute. The nurses told me he knew I was coming, so I find peace with that. My father comes from a heritage of struggle, as everyone said, an approach to survival that puts integrity above all else. In his own way, and whether he liked how it happened or not, he passed this on to me immensely and deeply. It defines me. I'll go to my grave being accused of being intense, and I'm proud of that. He passed this on to me, and I'm truly proud and grateful. I knew different versions of my dad as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, and essentially an entirely new person after his stroke. We had our issues, he had his issues, but while imperfect, a sincere commitment to letting each other know that we were there for each other, never calmed down until his last moments. And I'm selfishly comforted by that realization. And specifically, the nurse's words that morning that I lost him telling me that he knew I was coming. And even if conversations were difficult at that point, him knowing I was coming was all that mattered. I had the unfortunate privilege of seeing his body the day after we lost him. And I don't deal with things through religion. So things like this, where the unknown is there, it's really hard to navigate emotionally sometimes. But I've lost close people in my life, and I believe that people's memories are preserved in your actions and your integrity that you demonstrate as you continue surviving, as he did in his own way, as our grandparents did. And in front of his body, as hard as that was, and I was really leaning not to see him, but my brother pushed me, and I don't regret it, even if that is something that I am still dealing with. He'll forever live on in my memory. I told him that in my heart, in my actions, in the integrity I commit to, and the integrity that defines me, that he helped form, whether he intended to or not. And regardless of inconvenience, I'm committed to the integrity that I know he was impressed with, he was proud of, he complimented me on, and I really appreciated it. And I promised him that, and now I'm making that promise here, so I have to do it, right? This was repeated a few times, but I think it's because it really demonstrated who his character was. Until his last breath, he tried to walk. He had his pride, his obnoxious pride, but still pride that I respected nonetheless. He didn't budge. He was so consistent, just like my Nana, who I also love. And I was one of the few people that got away with everything for her, and I'm sure a few people in this room know what that means. I was really lucky to be loved by her. And she loved my dad, and she really affected my dad for better or worse, but I think that his pride did not budge till the end and was consistent. And I was so inspired and saddened by it at the same time, because what do you say to someone you love when you know that they're not going to walk again, when they're saying they're going to walk again? You don't say anything. You just sit there humble and you show respect, and maybe they'll walk again. Maybe they'll prove you wrong. But I do remember watching The Office with him. Before his stroke, we had I would visit him a couple times a year when he was in Hull, and basically we would find peace smoking weed and watching either Curb Your Enthusiasm or The Office together. And that was kind of our bonding moment before the stroke. And I remember once, whether it was one of those two shows, and I don't remember the episode, but he told me that if I ever end up, as he did the last 12 years, kill me. And he did end up like that. And but he woke up, I remember being in the ICU with Rachel and Robert and Mom. And basically being under the assumption that he was going to die, being told he had a 10% chance to get through it, and just having all these thoughts race through my mind of beef that could have been resolved, beef that was unnecessary. Just, I'm sure everyone can project on me right now based on being his son. We were both intense people, and it manifested in positive ways and negative ways. But I loved him. I love him. He loved me. And even though he ended up in that condition, he persevered. He demonstrated the utmost resilience. He never lost his strength. He planned to walk no matter what he was told, and his little strength was always there to remind us that he loved us, and also, obviously, to be told that we loved him. He apologized a lot to me. Like I said, I missed him a month and a few days ago, and I'm trying to get over that punishing irony. But I saw him in January, and I think I had an opportunity to see him as one of his more aware moments, and just sat there for 6 or 7 hours just listening to stories, and him just telling me he's sorry he wasn't around as much, or this or that, and just that he loved me. And his imperfections are what they are, but I know that he was not a malicious person, and I know that he truly loved me and would have taken a bullet for me. And his appreciation for his friends, I'm improvising now, even if I'm pretending. His appreciation for his friends is something that I am so happy that he taught me the importance of, because my friends are also my family and have helped me a lot. And some of them I met my father and always found him really entertaining or loving. He was never malicious and really charming, which is what he got away with so much shit for. But he loved my brother and sister, and he loved y'all. And it's just such a bummer that we couldn't have done this before, but it is what it is. He fought till his last breath, and I wish I could see him to call him. I wrote this. I wish I could see him to call him a schmuck for leaving when he did. He lived me a few hours. But after that ICU, and honestly, the advice that I would give you all from this unprecedented moment for at least my brother, me, and my sister of losing our father, is that in that ICU, I made a commitment to myself that I just wanted a standard to live up to, where if this moment that I'm in right now happened, I wouldn't have regrets as to him knowing I loved him and me knowing he loved me, and also just knowing that my Nana was proud of me because I was so close to her. And she, in her final days, before she really dove into dementia, really was on my ass to be there for my dad. And I would have been anyway, but she loved him and he loved her, even if it didn't always seem that way. And regardless, even though these 12 years were full of pain and a harsh reality, it gave me, at least, an opportunity after that ICU to reconnect with my father in a very deep way and meet a standard that I'm proud of, to be standing here now and know that I don't have regrets. And I hope people set that precedent with the people they love going forward, because at any moment, you could lose them, and it's most likely that the conflict or beef is probably not worth it. So, yeah. He loved anyone who showed up, and he died a proud survivor, and I promised him, and I promise y'all, that I'll live on as a proud descendant of survivors in my blood that pumps in my heart with Nana and Papa's, with my dad. And I know that I spoke to him the day before he passed, or that he knew that I loved him, that y'all loved him, and that's enough, because that's all we have. I apologize for not being super articulate and pretending to read an outline like it's a script, but I'm really happy to say that I love my dad. I always will. And our grandparents, they didn't struggle for nothing, and his honor lives on in all of our actions. Ironically, even though I also hate the West End house, fuck that place. But with that said, we are very grateful to have this space to remember him. And when I saw his body, I didn't have anything to put in his pocket before he went to the cremation. So I just gave him a piece of this tissue with my tears, the receipt from a donation to a museum from our family. And in his pocket, I just found this vape pen of weed. And I haven't smoked it since. And I'm not really super into weed culture, but my dad was so hyped on it, and it was something that brought us all together. And when it's appropriate and I'm not inside this place, despite me not caring so much about the West End house, for diplomatic sake, if anyone wants to hit this pipe today, it was one of the last things in my father's possession before his cremation. So anyway, there's my rant. And cheers to Dad. And I'm happy y'all are here.
This room is heavy with a flood of affection and the love that words do no justice to. For any of us to be able to have testimonies like this, especially from his children, we will have known that we have lived beautiful lives. The fact is, no one said life was easy or is easy. And I think the great challenge we have is that how do we, I have to back up. There's a great quote that I came across about a few months ago, and it's by a 19th century French philosopher, mystic. And he talks about the heroes of this life as those who live in the world and still love it. Those who live in the world and still love it. And what I understand that to mean is that with all the troubles, all the difficulty, all the unfairness and inequalities and injustices, there is a fundamental appreciation for both the flaws and the beauty of human beings, of being in this universe of 13.7 billion years. We are the product of all that time. And that has brought people as extraordinary as Mitchell into our lives. One of the things that struck me about my relationship with Mitchell over the last decade or so is if I had not been in touch with him on the phone or in person for a month or two, he would call me up and he'd go, Chester, I'm just Peter just, it was the conversation. Shlee here, Chester, just wondering when you're going to come down. But his great concern, if I had not been in touch with him, either calling or coming down to visit him, is if I had forgotten him. Chester, I'm just concerned. I haven't heard from you in a while. I just want to make sure you haven't forgotten me. And I was always taken aback, thinking, how can you possibly? I said, are you kidding? Dude, how can you possibly think I can never forget you? Mitchell's hope, his dream that we remember him, is being realized and will continue to be realized. And with this in mind, I'd like to have us participate in a little bit of a exchange called the Litany of Remembrance, written by a couple rabbis. The title of it is We Remember Them. And what I would like us to say together after I introduce each line is, we will remember him. We will remember him. Because he was a child of Selena and Paul Asch, we will remember him. Because he loved his family, especially his 3 children, we will remember him. Because Mitchell was our friend, we will remember him. Because he made us laugh, we will remember him. Because he showed so much courage after his stroke, we will remember him. Because his passing reminds us of our own mortality, and that we cannot wait to do what needs to be done, and that we make the most of the years that are to come. We will remember him. And I'd like to end with a short poem from the ever-quotable Mary Oliver. It's called The Uses of Sorrow. And I quote, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." And I want to close by simply recognizing the honor, the privilege, the gift that all of us share, the one-heartedness that we all share together in this room, and when we leave from here, that we will bring Mitch's memory, Mitch's love, Mitch's affection, and the fact that we have the great gift of being part of his life and he being part of our life, that we will carry this out together. And so I think that is a wrap. Robert, where are you, if that's not the case? And so I guess there's food, etc., outside. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Happy that we get one.